It is Monday, 26th of February 2024. Got the live on air sign in the background. I'm not live, of course, it's pre-recorded, but I got this sign as a Christmas present and I thought it was time I gave it an airing in these videos, so here it is. Welcome to the God 3.0 video. It's time to ruffle a few more feathers, rattle a few more cages, and no doubt offend a whole bunch of people. It's not that I ever set out to offend people with these videos. All I'm doing ultimately, as anyone will see if they study the content, is asking questions. I don't profess to know anything. I'm just trying to know. Getting offended is a choice. If people get offended at the content, that's down to them. It's down to anyone what they make of what I put out in these videos. But I've got to say, the vast bulk of people that have been getting offended and letting me know about it identify as Christians. It's interesting because I've had no pissed off Buddhists, I've had no pissed off Hindus, no pissed off Jews, no pissed off Muslims. I've not even had any pissed off atheists saying your view of theology is flawed and skewed and is wrong. Only Christians. And what has been the standard response of these Christians? Have they sought to reach out a hand of fellowship and friendship to a brother in need? No. Their response has been to make response videos about me and stick them up on YouTube. So dear old Marty Bucko came back for another go. He couldn't let it rest. So Marty put out a response video to my last one, and he seemed to think that my God 2.0 video, which was about an hour and a half in length, because there was a lot of stuff there, was all about him. Bless him. Marty confirmed that he really does believe there was a man named Jonah who got swallowed up by a whale and lived in his belly for 3 days because a book tells him so. A book which David Icke is fond of describing as having been written who knows when, by who knows where, in who knows what circumstances. But Marty takes it literally and will not accept that the Bible is allegorical. So, there's not much more I can say about that situation. Nigel Watson couldn't let it rest either. He came back for another go. And also there was a dude named Wyvern the Terrible. And he's so terrible that he doesn't use his own name with his videos. So, big man hiding behind a pseudonym. So it's a real shame because he's got some good content on his channel otherwise. He goes into social engineering psyops. Saw a video of his about the punk and new wave scene, which was bang on. And he talks about the 60s counterculture and all this. But he seems to have a problem with me. So he put out 2 videos, one titled Mark Devlin versus God, which is never what it was. And the other one was titled, What are Mark Devlin's motives in spiritually demoralizing his audience? Which is never anything that I would set out to do. Why would I? Again, I'm just asking questions. And in that video, he makes mention of a clock, which I featured in some of my previous videos. So I'm in a new place now, but in my previous home, I used to have this clock on the wall in the background, visible when I was recording my videos. So this is it. And it's a great clock, which was made for me specially by a guy who specialises in these products. So as you can see, it's got the front cover of my Musical Truth 3 book, and it's got hands fashioned in the form of styluses on a turntable. So it's pretty neat, the guy did a really good bespoke job of it. But Wyvern was pointing out that the hands to this clock are set to 9 and 11. So they almost are. I mean, the top one is just past the 11. So to explain that clock was making a lot of noise in the background of my videos. When I put the battery in it, the tick was very loud, and I felt it was interfering in my videos. So I took the battery out, which is why when you saw the clock on the wall in the back of my background of my videos, it was always set at the same time. Now, I was surprised to learn that it was 9 and 11 to which the hands were set, or almost, because it wasn't intentional. So there seems to be something synchromistic about it. Certain forces might be at work in terms of causing it to be that way, but in all honesty, I'd never noticed until this guy pointed it out. Many people just won't believe that, they won't accept it. People can make of it what they will, but that's what I'm telling you about it. And Wyvern also says that I never made any mention of that clock. It just appeared in the background, and he seems to think it's some sort of occult ritualistic communication that's going on. Actually, I did mention it. There was a video from September 2021 when I was at a conference event in Birmingham organised by Martin Liedker, and he went round filming the different tables, and he came up to my merch table where I was sat with that clock, and I held the clock up and said, "This is a great present that somebody sent me." So I don't go much on Wyvern's research skills because he maintains that I never mentioned where that clock came from. That video is on all my channels and has been there since September 2021. Anyway, it is what it is, and this is the point. All these Christians are making response videos, and they're saying things like, "Oh, Mark Devlin looks like he's in a really bad place, and he seems like a really messed up guy." That's the words that Wyvern used. So none of them think to reach out to me and say, "Are you okay, mate? Do you want any assistance? Can I help you in any way? Do you want to talk about what you're going through?" No, the standard response is to get upset, give a knee-jerk reaction, and put a video out. Apparently that's what Jesus would do. And lo, Jesus did saith unto them, "If thou should findeth a brother in need, do not helpeth thy brother, but say unto him, fucketh thou." Something like that. People will get very upset about that. It is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be. In this video, I want to read out some more responses that I received to the last one. Got some great correspondence, some really good points being raised. And to anyone who is taking offence to the content of these videos, I would invite them to give an adequate, acceptable, logical answer to the two overriding questions which remain, which I raise, and I'm still waiting for someone to give me a response that makes any kind of sense. These questions are: why is there a direct correlation between the amount of good work that you try and do in the world, standing in right action, doing what you know to be right, aligning yourself with the rest of humanity and creation, doing no harm, seeking to help others, and the amount of suffering, hardship, and general shit that gets thrown your way as a result? So in other words, the harder you try to do good, the more crap you reap. The other question is, why is the natural world, the food chain, so utterly horrific and barbaric, whereby billions of living sentient beings are forced to go through pain, torment, trauma, and agonizing deaths just to feed other species every single day all over the world? Why could a loving God, if that's what we have, not have created a realm where that kind of scenario is not necessary? Why could there not have been a better system put into place if this world is all about love? If God is good and cares about us? Again, it's all just questions. I'm going to be embedding a few videos from other researchers into this one, which I think help to reinforce some of the points that I'm making or the questions that I'm raising. And the first one is from Eric Dubay. I'm going to be having a conversation with Eric next week, and this is going to be put out on his platforms as well as mine. It's going to be free-flowing, it's going to be no holds barred, as you might expect, and we're going to be going deep into these important questions. In the meantime, this is a short video that he put out just recently, and he's been cranking out some really great content. It's simply titled, You Know Nothing. And it really makes the point.
Life is apt likened to a large ship sailing on a vast ocean. There are no shores in sight, no sails, no paddles, rudders, captain, or steering wheel. The ship is home to everyone, but not a single person on board knows who built the ship, where it came from, or where it's going. Nobody even knows how they got on board in the first place. Everyone simply shares the same story of waking up one day, and here they were. As you can imagine, such a mysterious situation as this human condition is quite heavy, confusing, and difficult to deal with. Observing and living with the fact that, deep down and in utter honesty, yourself and everyone else on board know nothing, is a truth that very few ever grasp or accept. A tiny minority in the back of the boat understand and fully embrace this reality, but the vast majority up front pile hope upon hope that someday, some way, someone will or has already appeared on board who does know something. Some say they have seen him. Some say they are him. Some say he came to the boat once, but died long ago. Some claim they know for certain who built the boat. Some claim the boat builder even wrote them a book. Others claim to know where the boat departed from, and others claim to know where it's going. Excited evangelists, frenzied philosophers, and missionaries on a mission fill the front of the boat, along with a large crowd of starry-eyed supporters, cocksure and righteously indignant, virtue-signaling and chest-puffing, always making a noisy commotion, and sometimes coming to blows with and killing one another. The few who keep to themselves in the back of the boat, the true skeptics, the radical agnostics, those who purposely refrain from all beliefs and retain the eyes of a child, are, ironically, the only ones who will still be open-minded enough to recognize the truth if and when it is revealed. Those who think they already know the truth, or follow one who does, are like the naked emperor and his subjects, acting as if this odd, confusing, mysterious circumstance is no more unusual than the sun's rise each morning. Only those who maintain the ability to see life with a fresh pair of eyes would even notice the emperor was wearing no clothes. The majority are too busy believing or pretending to know something that nobody does. So there is wisdom in waiting. Waiting for the afterlife before deciding about death. Waiting to meet your maker before describing him. The most cited quote by the most celebrated philosopher in history, Socrates, says essentially this. In many ways he would say the same thing, that the only true wisdom is to know that you know nothing. The most honest declaration of limitation. All I know is that I know nothing. It is truly ironic that the most resonant quote by one of the smartest men in history is simply reminding us that even the most intelligent geniuses really don't know anything. We are all in this same boat together. Nobody knows who built it or why, where it started or where it's going. But accepting this foundationless foundation is all we have here in the open ocean. Until we actually see land, the only sane philosophy is to wait. Every prophet is a sophist. Every religion is a foregone conclusion. Those of us in the back of the boat are content with our current ambiguity and willing to wait for solid ground before making missteps. Far from impotent or ignorant, the agnostic is ironically the most ready to receive true gnosis. as the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer stated, he who truly thinks for himself is like a monarch, in that he recognizes no one over him. His judgments, like the decisions of a monarch, arise directly from his own absolute power. He no more accepts authorities than a monarch does orders, and he acknowledges the validity of nothing he has not himself confirmed.
So Eric is making the point there that the only logical, sensible approach to theology is agnosticism, admitting that you know nothing. Socrates is said to have made a quote along those lines. The only thing I know is that I know nothing, or words to that effect. And he's lauded as a great mind, a great thinker. There's nothing wrong with admitting you don't know about something. See, this is something we get with so many researchers in the truth and conspiracy and freedom movement. Everyone wants to insist that they've got the answer. They know what's going on. Their way is the right way. And if you don't agree with them, you're just plain wrong. The truth is, nobody knows for sure, because we can't. We're in a realm where we're deliberately left without answers, as that video just pointed out. We're on a ship, and we don't know how we got there or where we're going. It's a great analogy. And it's okay to accept that. I guess the purpose of these lives is to ask the questions, try and find out the answers, but we shouldn't be arrogant enough to insist that we found the answers. And if you don't agree with what any of us conclude, then you're wrong. And you deserve to have videos made about you, and you deserve to be derided and such. We're all trying to find the answers together. We can support each other, we can assist each other, we can share information with each other, and that's the way it should be. But ultimately, we just don't know. A great one-liner applies to that video, which is, the unknown is a blank page to be filled with lies. That's one that somebody sent in to me. The unknown is a blank page to be filled with lies. And the other great one-liner that I received was, no good deed goes unpunished. Just think about that. That ties into my earlier contention that the more good you try and put into the world, the more suffering you reap as a result. No good deed goes unpunished. So what kind of realm are we in? What kind of God, what kind of force presides over a world where those dynamics are in place? So yeah, I'm going through a process. I would describe it as agnosticism. I've been through various different stages in my life, as I've shared before, and I'm really transitioning, I feel, going through a paradigm shift into straight agnosticism. I just don't know, but I want to know, and I'm never going to stop asking the questions. I want to play another couple of video clips now, and these come from Mark, the proprietor of the Forever Conscious research channel on YouTube. Quite a few people wrote into me and said that I should look at this guy's work. I have come across some of his videos before, and I've got a couple here where they really resonated, and he's asking similar questions to the ones which are coming across my mind right now. A lot of people will say, where have you been? You're late to the party. There have been, commentators and researchers discussing these topics online for years. And again, we come to these subjects and these realizations when we're ready, when it makes sense to us. We can wonder why there are people only just waking up to truth and taking their first baby steps, even now in 2024. It's because they weren't ready before. They had to get to that stage in their own personal journey. And I guess that's just where I am right now. I'm at that point. So let's take a listen to Mark from Forever Conscious making some really great points here.
What loving God, grand architect, or whoever creates such a place creates such a flawed body? If it was all for learning and self-discovery, and why can't you take what you learn here with you? How can you learn from your mistakes or get a redo here if you don't know how you screwed up in the last lifetime? Why is the human species and body engineered for suffering and brainwashing? This quote, end quote, loving God many subscribe to is extremely flawed and sadistic. If this loving God was so on our side, why haven't they shut this place down or at a minimum fixed it? And we're going to get into, in a minute, non-intervention, which that's a big new age concept that I am going to just throw the gamut at. But that's towards the end. But I want to make sure that that's, you understand, we're going to get into that. Let's see. What loving God would have the balls to strip you of your sovereignty the way this place does? What loving God would allow the realm it created to be treated like such a dumpster fire? Things like chemicals, both in the ground and our skies, oil, factories, pollution, GMOs, fluoride, chlorine, etc. Think about it. What God would allow the suppression of free energy and various other eco-friendly options to keep its creation free of said dumpster fire? Instead, this knowledge is hidden and maintained by psychopaths. These psychopaths are then allowed to shift all the blame to humanity instead. We are the ones to blame for the dumpster fire, not those who offered the dumpster fire as our only option in the first place. Why is that? It's control, of course. Isn't that very loving, right? So we have climate change, whatever you believe in regards to that. We're blamed for that, right? They take that and they say, oh, well, the humans are ruining the earth, this and that. Well, guess what? We're working within the means of this parasitic's list of options. When most of us here know damn well there's alternative technologies and they've been around for a long, long time. What loving God wouldn't allow his quote-unquote children the absolute bare essentials at birth? The fact that humanity does not have a right to shelter itself at birth when coming here is disgusting. The fact anyone would be homeless and not be able to roam freely and pick out a plot of land that wasn't already taken by another sovereign being is pretty telling, right? Animals get to come here and plant wherever they want, make nests wherever they want. And if a piece of land or like a tree has a nest in it, the bird goes and finds another tree to make a nest in, right? Just like we would do. At least that's what common sense would say, right? When you get to the harsh understanding and knowing that evil not only runs this place, but created this place, while it is a hard pill to swallow, it is necessary knowledge to learn. I wish I could sit here and say it's all unicorns, rainbows, love, and light, but it's not. Everything that has, is, and will happen is engineered that way on purpose here. Humans and many other species in this realm are energy-emitting machines, and what type of energy is mostly put out? Fear and negativity, right? How is it that they show no fear about all of the crap they've done, but yet we are told about karma, right? They can rape and pillage everyone and everything, but the world has its way of balancing the karmic scales. Get out of here with that crap, okay? Again, it's a laughing stock, a joke, a total joke. You should just be a good person for being a good person. Being in this body comes with flaws, but you know right from wrong. And you can look on the news, you can look at what your governments are doing, and on down the line, corporations, whatever it may be, and you'll know that what they're doing is completely wrong. And if karma existed on any scale, why are they allowed to just, why don't they don't care, they just do it. Okay, here is also another question we have to ask ourselves. Why does evil always, and I mean always, have the upper hand here? The answer, again, in its simplest term, is that it has been engineered that way. How come humanity doesn't or hasn't rose up against this evil? I suspect, but don't know for certain, that this type of action might not even be possible, at least in the long term.
All right, well, what more can you add to that? Just before I get into the correspondence, I don't want to read out a whole bunch of this. This may well be another hour and a half long video, who knows. Got another clip to play you. Now, this is a bit of an obscure one, but again, it really makes the point, so bear with me here. There was a really great TV series which ran in the UK in the late 70s and early 80s. Many people of my generation might remember it. It was called Sapphire and Steel. It starred David McCullum and Joanna Lumley. It was this sort of otherworldly, paranormal, time travel, sort of alternative dimension type science fiction. Quite low budget, but miles better than the BBC's Doctor Who, in my estimation. The second series really made an impact. It actually scared me to death. I was 9 years old when this came out, and it was set in a deserted railway station, and it involved Sapphire and Steel, who were these interdimensional sort of time travellers, I guess, making contact with spirits, and specifically the ghost of a World War I soldier. The gist of it was that there was a parasitic force, some sort of supernatural force, which was feeding off of the resentment of those who had died unjustly, unfairly. So they've got a grudge in terms of having lost their lives, as they see it, pointlessly. And they're pissed off about it. So you got this World War I soldier. He was killed after the armistice. So the announcement had not reached his troop, and he's out there on the battlefield, and he gets killed in action after the armistice has been called, and he feels that he shouldn't have died. Then there were a bunch of guys who were doing maintenance work on a submarine, and all the air went out of the submarine, so they suffocated, and they feel that they unfairly died. And there was a World War I pilot who had one more flying mission to complete to make up the number of hours before he could retire from flying. And in that final mission, his plane gets shot down and he dies. So you've got the spirits of all these people, these men, and they're pissed off, and this force is feeding off the resentment that they've got, the negative energy, and it's using it as sustenance, as food. And I feel that stands as a great metaphor for what may be going on in this realm, which raises the interesting possibility that the writers of that show, and maybe the director and the producer, knew a thing or two about, the truth of this realm. Makes for a very interesting analogy. Here we are over 40 years later using it to kind of illustrate the questions that we're asking now. Interestingly, the producer of this series, Sapphire and Steel, was a guy named Sean O'Riordan, and he turns out to be the father of Judge Jules, the very well-known international club DJ, dance music DJ. Judge Jules's uncle is the celebrity chef Rick Stein, and his father turns out to have been an actor and a TV producer who was behind Sapphire and Steel. So there's an interesting connection which ties back into my music industry research. Judge Jules was a very influential DJ in the early days of the acid house rave scene, which got the whole international dance music and clubbing culture scene off the ground. So let's take a look at this. Sapphire and Steel, 1979, and the themes. So if you can dig out the full series of that Sapphire and Steel season, it was the second series, which I feel was the very best, absolutely chilling, terrifying, but really well made, then you should seek that out. You can get episodes online if you search for it. Alright, so it's time to get into the correspondence. I'm going to be reading out messages which I've received either by email or which have been left below the various video platforms where I've put out the previous broadcasts. So I'm going to start with an objector. What I'm not going to do with these messages is read out any from orthodox religious adherents. So whether it's Christians or Muslims or anyone else, if all they're going to do is quote their holy book and throw scripture at me and just reinforce religious dogma, which has been around for centuries, there's no point in me reading that out. Everyone knows what Orthodox Christians believe, Orthodox Muslims, Orthodox Hindus, whatever. You know, you can seek that stuff out. You can find that elsewhere. You don't need it on this video. Similarly, I'm not going to be reinforcing this new agey sort of concept that our souls in the spirit realm make the decision by consent to come down here and incarnate into these meat suit bodies and have these experiences because our souls wish to evolve and grow and go through these different experiences. I no longer resonate with that. That idea did make sense to me for quite a number of years, but now I've got questions like, why would any spirit soul consent to come into this realm and be a sexually abused child that undergoes satanic ritual abuse, all these absolute horrors? Why would anyone consent to come in and be a child in Gaza and to have a bomb fall on their house in the middle of the night, blow off their limbs, have their parents wailing in the street and turmoil everywhere, chaos everywhere? Why would anyone choose to undergo that kind of experience? It just doesn't cut it with me anymore. The idea that, oh, you can grow from it and you can learn from it and it's what your soul needs. Nah, not having it. So I'm not going to be reading out any responses that reinforce those ideas because they've all had enough of an airing already. How many videos can you find online espousing those kind of thoughts? To my thinking now, that is very new age in its approach, and it's probably a psyop. It's probably being concocted to steer off people asking genuine, important questions about what we're doing here, what this place is, what the true nature of God is, off down the garden path. You know, feed them all this stuff and it stops them from looking over here, which is where the real answers may lie. So, not reading out any of that stuff, but I'm going to start with an objector. The only reason I'm giving this guy some airtime is because he and I have had a lot of correspondence over the years. He's been a supporter of my work. He generally supports my work, but he just didn't appreciate what I had to say in this particular video. So I'll read out what he has to say in all fairness. He says, "Not only did you not read my response, which attempts to answer all of your questions, and all of the others you read out from viewers, but you didn't read anyone else's response that attempted to answer your queries on God. You owe us equal time if you're truly a truth seeker. Life is like a movie, but we come in late and leave early, so we never quite grasp the justice and the fairness of everything we see and feel going on that God does herein. We can't perceive the world in its proper historical perspective, just like we cannot understand what the heck is going on in a movie where we miss the beginning and get up and leave before the ending. He goes on to talk about the Ouija board, which was mentioned in the previous video, and the response that somebody told me they received from one of these boards about God and Satan being the same. He says the answer is always received because the Ouija board is a dark, satanic, black magic device that always spews out Satan's response. So what more can you expect from pure evil except more evil? God doesn't need anything or anyone. We need duality to exist apart from God in order to have free choice, etc. But God, who is the epitome and the essence of oneness and is eternal, requires and needs nothing whatsoever to exist. Our period is the end of days, and God is about to redeem his world and creation. Everyone alive is presently being given a final chance to earn immortality by choosing good over evil. And this is me speaking now. This is the main crux of what I'm talking about in these videos. All the people that I know, my personal friends and many truth seekers I know who are trying to do that. They're trying to choose good over evil. But they're only reaping all kinds of suffering as a result of choosing that good. So back to what this guy's written. Also, the final testing of each of us is currently going on to see if, despite seeing evil massively prosper right now, we can still have faith in a benevolent and compassionate God. You, Eric Dubay, and all the rest on here in this video are clearly failing miserably, especially because you won't air anyone who disagrees with your take. Finally, God is also giving evildoers their last hurrah to enjoy their pleasure and power over the earth, to fully pay them off for any good they might have done before their imminent, total and utter annihilation. Alright, so I've read the response. I differ with it, but I've allowed this guy his say. So let's move on to some others. And just to add to that previous reference to the Ouija board, somebody simply wrote in, the Ouija board saying God and Satan are the same sounds like it could be talking about the Old and New Testaments. Well, certainly the God of the different sections of the Bible appears to be a completely different entity. I think few would disagree with that. The God of the Old Testament is jealous, is psychopathic, is narcissistic, and displays all the traits that we're told we shouldn't. So God in the Old Testament is what we're encouraged not to be, or ordered not to be. So how does that work then? And then by the New Testament, he's become so loving after dishing out all the plagues and the pestilence and all the punishments and wiping out almost all of humanity except Noah on his boat. In the New Testament, he suddenly loves us so much that he incarnates in physical human form and allows himself to be tortured and die on our behalf. What the New Testament is really all about is astrotheology, with Jesus representing the sun on its journey through the skies and through the zodiac. It's all encoded in the Bible. That's what it is, an astrotheological allegory. Just pissed off a whole bunch of Christians again, no doubt. But just making the point that God has completely transformed personality from the Old Testament to the New. And yet, we're asked to believe that it's the same entity throughout and just trust it, just trust the book. Trust what's written on a few pages in some book that just appeared somewhere, somehow. You know, it's all real. Okay, so somebody else wrote in to say, been thinking about why bad stuff happens to good people. A few ideas. 1. It's classic inversion. Too simplistic to be the only reason. As an aside, why have slang terms such as bad, sick, and wicked become synonyms for good? So young people will say, yes, wicked, man, that's sick, that's a bad tune, I'm telling you. They were saying this in the 80s, you know, wicked was a big word in the 1980s, meaning something that's really good. Michael Jackson had his song Bad, where he was implying that, you know, it's a good thing to be bad. So it is inversion. And then you've got these brands, which I've mentioned before, these food brands that you find in supermarkets now, things like Heck, which is a minced oath, meaning hell, basically. And also Heck 293 is a food additive which is derived from aborted fetus cells. And they're actually putting this stuff in food and being quite open about it. You can research it, Heck 293. Then you've got a brand called Wicked Kitchen, which is plant-based stuff. So, you know, if it's plant-based, it's supposed to be good, right? Because it's avoiding suffering being inflicted on animals. So why do you have to call it Wicked Kitchen? Unless there's something else going on with it that we don't know about. All right, back to this email. It, or they, so she's talking about God or this group of entities, whatever they may be, get a massive kick out of us, out of using our gentle nature against us. I believe humans are born pure, kind, and loving, although it's relentlessly corrupted by design for the win. It's always there in our fundamental natures. Given the deliberately deplorable state of the world, I suspect most decent people feel anxiety, shame, and depression most of the time, wouldn't you say? This is what it wants, sadly. And me speaking again now, wouldn't that be an ingenious thing? If you were the creator of a realm such as this, and you were actually malevolent rather than benevolent, you were evil in nature and you wanted to suppress and enslave and inflict pain and terror and fear, wouldn't it be an absolute masterstroke to create a species where in most people they have it built into them by default to gravitate towards good, what's right, to want to help others? Most people don't want to be shits. I don't feel. Most people aren't narcissistic in their natural state. Most people would like to help others if they can. Obviously, there are exceptions. There are shits, there are psychopaths, sociopaths, just selfish bastards. But most people, I think, are fundamentally good. So what if we've been created that way so that we suffer more? Just thinking out loud, not claiming this is the case, but just supposing we had this malevolent God entity, and this world is deliberately made so painful and so difficult to operate in, it would be even more difficult to operate if we gravitated towards wanting to do the right thing all the time. Just saying. Then the third point here is when bad things happen, we suffer. When we suffer, fat bastard, which is this person's word for this entity, whatever it may be, absolutely bloody loves it. Honestly, if it's all about loosh, then they, or it, go to extraordinarily elaborate lengths just to get a meal. We can only hope that there are some tie-dye wearing, loosh abstaining vegan gods who protest on our behalf and have our backs. I like her style. Alright, on to the next one. The answer is simple. Good people have a built-in glitch, a useful one, since their suffering warns those who might be thinking about becoming good never to do this, because everybody wants earthly happiness. So it works both ways. Bad people will never become good for fear of the consequences, and good people will eventually sell their soul to avoid suffering, especially the suffering of their children. I've seen many good-natured people turn bad after experiencing other people and life events. The sad example of good people is a safety feature perpetuating the system. So that kind of backs up the earlier observation about how those who try and do good suffer, and maybe others looking on who were thinking of trying to step into right action more so, look at what happens to those who have and think, oh, no, forget that. That's not for me. I'll stay where I am. I'll carry on living the way I am. Next, correspondence. A genuine observation. I can understand rationally why people might come to the conclusion that the creative force is not benevolent, given absolutely horrific things can happen to people that really don't deserve them. But then the thought that God or the creative force is actually malevolent or demonic is almost too awful to contemplate. If you believe that, and I do see how people could, how could you avoid slipping into soul-destroying nihilistic apathy? How would you get up every day knowing life is set up to screw you over? Not being antagonistic, just genuinely wondering what people's thoughts are on this. And that's a good point as well. I mean, somehow we do have to find ways of getting up in the morning and continuing to get on with things. But I wonder about this as well. If this place is set up for suffering and such, how do we find the moral fortitude or the strength to continue to operate in it? And I don't make these videos to try and piss people off, despite what, Wyvern the Terrible claims that I'm deliberately demoralising my audience. I'm asking questions. And if anyone doesn't like these videos, they are of course free to turn them off and jog along to the next channel, which is more to their liking. But a lot of people are writing into me and they're saying thanks for raising these issues, because very few other people talk about this. Mark from Forever Conscious does, Eric Dubé does, Tony Sayers has actually been making some videos about this as well, and various others. And I do think it's important to raise these things. It's not my intention to put people on a downer, but aren't these lives all about trying to discover things, trying to attain knowledge? Isn't that the point of it all? Isn't that why we're here? Isn't it a completely wasted life to get to the end of it not having given thought and reflection and contemplation to these important questions? What could be more important than asking why we're here, what we're supposed to be doing, and where we're going when it's all over? Bit more important than last night's football, bit more important than what ready meal from Lidl you can have for dinner tonight, I would maintain. Right, next, correspondence. I read the Revelations chapter from the Bible, and it really is quite a loathsome piece of writing. God just seems to want praise and adulation for his genius and control of when and how he receives it. He role models how not to behave as a human being by being all the things he advocates that we shouldn't, which is the point I was making earlier, i.e. vengeful, proud, wrathful, envious. Why create an individual in a certain way and then blame and judge him for the way he was created? The devil gets blamed for everything, but it's God who allows the devil to act as he was scripted to do, if it was all laid out as a divine plan. People come to God through fear, not love, as he obviously isn't a loving God. He's a totalitarian bully who coerces people into compliance through destroying and removing what is meaningful to them, i.e. love, wealth, health, etc., rendering them helpless, desperate and lost. The Bible says, don't invest in worldly things, just love and adore God. But where's the sense in constantly being punished for wanting money, love, connection, meaning and purpose through the realm of experience that he has so-called created for us? I guess my soul will be lost, even though I believe in God. But to me, he's to blame for the world being as it is, and to be rewarded with everlasting life and participation in the Millennium Kingdom seems a gross parallel to the way the Jews were locked out of Nazi Germany for their inability to meet deemed regulations of purity or worthiness. We're really getting into controversial ground now. That's pissed off a few more. Or the non-nappy wearers were treated during COVID. Or the non-Britneys, I might add to that. Britneyed. It should be good enough to live a life as being decent, fair, honest and helpful as possible, without having to jump through all these authoritarian hoops. Alright, so that dude was on a rant there. Next one is short and sweet. I feel that as we question more and more everything around us like at no other time, regardless of our spiritual or religious paths, the deeper we've gone inside ourselves to try and find the answers. And it's unfamiliar, hard and unfathomable. But we have to keep going on our individual journeys to the end without fear, but with compassion and love no matter what. And I wrote a response to this one. This was left below one of the video platforms. I just read my response. I said, "Many thanks for the feedback. I've arrived at very similar conclusions myself recently. If this world were steeped in evil and the product of a malevolent entity, it would go all the way to explaining why good people suffer so much for their noble actions and evildoers flourish and thrive. That only leaves us with the question of what it is about the likes of us, those of us who ask these questions, those of us who can see through the bullshit, those of us that are watching these videos, I guess. What is it about us that makes us gravitate towards good and right action, if we are also the products of a malevolent God? Why aren't we also shitty scumbags, like Matt Hancock and all the rest of them, for example? I like using Hancock as an example. Not particularly keen on the fella, you may have noticed. Someone else writes, I have a platform on Facebook where I've been stirring things up over questioning religion. It's going to happen. This morning I was sent your podcast. Halfway through it and I had to message you just to tell you how much I relate so much with absolutely everything you're speaking about. These are the same thoughts and questions I've been asking too. Oh, but the attacks I get from asking such questions is shocking. Yep. I feel like the words religion, God, Bible and Jesus are words which have masterfully hypnotized humanity into a boxed-in irrational belief. Yeah, those words are becoming like, V, the arm spear and all these other words that you couldn't say on YouTube over the course of the last 3 or 4 years without getting a video taken down. They trigger people. The AI bots are probably looking out for these words in the sound waves. I'll add globe, there's another one, to that list of words, as you mentioned Eric Dubay. More triggering. So I feel we may be on the same page there too. Yes, I think we probably are. The reasoning in their arguments lacks any critical thinking at all, and yet they call themselves awake truthers. Yeah. Viewers might be aware that last week I posted an interview with a dude named Christian Sundberg. And he speaks of memories which he claims to have between lives. He claims to be able to remember before he incarnated into his current body, life. He has memories of being in the spirit realm and of agreeing to come in and go through this life experience. I've had a ton of feedback to that interview, and I want to read out some reactions to that here. Someone simply writes, "There is no growth in a continuation of amnesic cycles. If you're a spark of the Godhead, you will have already learnt everything imaginable countless times." So in other words, there's no reason to keep reincarnating and coming back over and over and over again with a mind wipe every time, so you forget what you've learnt and you have to go through the whole thing all over again. Somebody else has written, "Where do I sign so that I never have to come back to Earth ever again?" Is that emphatic enough? "This life has broken me. I try to be good, but it doesn't pay. I see psychopaths getting everything they want and wonder, does good really pay? It doesn't, does it? I have a son with autism and learning difficulties and who has now become a binge-drinking alcoholic, brought on over the last 4 years. I don't recall saying yes to any of this. It's hell. How is this helping me to become a better person if my brain is mashed with stress and stress-related memory loss? All I can do is make it from one day to the next. That's not spiritual progress, is it?" Somebody else. "I'm glad Mark hosted and posted this interview. It's an important part of the process. I held Christian's viewpoint 18 months ago, but then realised it's too pie in the sky. Christian absolves the CEO of this realm, i.e. the Demiurge or Yaldabaoth, of the real responsibility for your apropos shit sandwich. If you overlaid a video interviewing a battered wife who is still suffering Stockholm Syndrome regarding her predicament, she would be making excuses for her male abuser in similar ways. Then one's soul is every bit as wicked as God to inflict suffering on an unaware entity, even if it's oneself. Think about it." So just to embellish that point myself, the golden rule within natural law, which governs the behaviours and consequences of human activity in this realm, is the non-aggression principle, which states basically, do no harm. Do not treat others in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself, or do not instigate any harm, damage or loss against any other living sentient being. So I think the point this individual is making here is that if we are aspects of God, the divine, which splits itself into these individuated units of consciousness and comes here and incarnates to have these experiences, then we are choosing to inflict harm, damage and loss on ourselves because we agree to come into these challenging circumstances and we know there's going to be pain and suffering and trauma and all the rest of it. So we're actually breaking the golden rule of natural law ourselves by inflicting harm, damage and loss on ourselves. Interesting concept. So the next one says, "I don't buy into the idea that we entered into an agreeable, consensual contract prior to our birth. I think too many people are running with this ball. There is zero evidence to substantiate this claim. Nobody in their right mind would consent into entering this hell realm just for an experience. And the idea that some of us come to Earth for altruistic reasons to serve others is also nonsense. as we have a memory wipe. And who exactly are we here to help, and how? Also, the point on duality is a nonsense theory too. This is a convenient platitude and cop-out for those who just cannot face the reality of this realm, nor the soul trap concept. There is far too much asymmetry in this world, leaning on suffering to suggest that things balance out. And this is me again now. The video that I embedded by Eric Dubay a couple of videos back makes this point, that things seem to be unfairly skewed towards suffering and hardship in this realm. It's not as if everything is equal and it balances out. There's not enough joy and happiness to balance out all the suffering and the hardship, particularly when you factor in, the animal kingdom, the natural world, the food chain, creatures slaughtering each other daily, all that pain, suffering and trauma. Where's enough joy, love and beauty to balance all that stuff out? Just asking. What too many people do not consider is other people's suffering around the world. It's not an argument to just look at our lives and say, well, things aren't too bad. The point is that there is overwhelming amounts of suffering and hardships in too many parts of the world, both human and animal suffering. Thanks for highlighting these important talking points. So a lot of people will say, yeah, I'm making sure my life is full of abundance and joy and beauty, and just thinking nice thoughts and keeping out all the negativity. And that's great if it works for you, and if you're fortunate enough to have a kind of life where you can do that. But there are people in parts of the world who can't do that. No matter how many nice thoughts they try and come up with, no matter how positive they try and keep their consciousness, the circumstances in which they find themselves mean that they're just unable to enjoy an abundant life in that way. So it's not just about us ourselves, it's about everyone else, because unfortunately we are all in this together. And a couple more that I'll read. This one is, I've been thinking that perhaps all life in this realm truly is God, not just in the spiritual way, but physically too. And this thought stemmed from me remembering something I thought about as a child. And I'm now almost certain that a satanic force created this realm, and it belongs to that force, not the good one in which we carry or are. So this is me again. I think the implication here is that we are products of original creation, and maybe the original God of creation, but something, some force, the demiurge, call it what you will, has somehow hijacked original creation and created a bastardized version of it in which we find ourselves. And that raises another big question for me, which I would throw in with the first two at the start of the video. What is the original God of creation doing, just kicking back and allowing this to happen, if some sort of parasitic, demonic force, demiurge, whatever, has hijacked God's original beautiful creation and instead replaced it with this shithole hell world? Where is God? Why is God not interfering? Because none of us consented to being plunged into this hell world and trapped in it. We don't want it. Why has God not banished this force, this entity, if God really is good? Just another big question coming from me. Back to this person's writing. I'm sure the Gnostics were right. I think we're carrying God in ourselves in the form of DNA. When I was at school and learnt about what DNA was, I wondered if DNA was actually God, because all life exists in order to perpetuate DNA, doesn't it? So the Britneys make sense. Why are they designed to alter out DNA? I don't believe it's just to make us sick. Most likely, the DNA repairs itself over generations, or something like that. Maybe, as it becomes cleaner, we start to wake up. And maybe, if enough of us wake up, the reality changes. Also, the way the Britneys have targeted the heart. In the physical body, the heart is the source of God, and so all decisions that come from the heart also come from the conscience. Did you know that the heart has its own independent nervous system and disobeys orders from the brain? But the brain always obeys orders from the heart. So I find it more than a coincidence that the heart is being destroyed by the Britneys. Body and soul are one, which reminds me of something Ramana Maharishi said to one of his disciples when that boy asked him if the soul was inside the body. Ramana said, to say that the soul is inside the body is like saying the canvas is inside the painting. Life is God, and the satanic force is not human, or maybe not even organic. I'm thinking it's AI, and it always has been. Yep, we're going deep. We're going deep. Many people have written into me about the Sanity Machine channel on YouTube, and they've recommended that the videos there are worth a listen. So this person's written, his conclusion is that this is a fucked up realm, and it seems to match yours and a lot of the emails that you shared, and he's pretty funny too. Forever Conscious Research channel on YouTube and Rumble delves deeply into this subject too, as we know, backed up with lots of videos and research on NDEs, near-death experiences, and the mind wipe, soul trap, prison planet evidence that we've been screwed over lifetime after lifetime with the guilt trip BS from fake higher beings sending us back to whatever prison planet or realm that suits the weirdo fucks with their sick, perverse game. And then I will read this one out as the final message. Somebody in response to the last video says, I used to feel like that too. I suppose I've got more protection around me now. It doesn't mean I'm winning on the material plane, but I'm defo winning spiritually. And the prize turns out to be the ability to access a sense of peace. I wish I could tell you to do this or do that, and you'll find it too. But I can't. Nobody can. But you're asking the right questions, and you're openly calling out the dark. I don't know the Bible inside and out, nor do I take a lot of it literally, and I haven't been in a church since Sunday school in the 70s. But one of my favourite passages is Matthew 6:6. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. See, I've always seen that passage as a veiled reference allegorically to the idea of going within our own temples, the temples of our skull, into the brain where all the magic happens, the brain chemistry. And we can access our pineal gland, this portal to higher consciousness, and that's what this passage is talking about, going into this quiet room and praying. At least that made sense to me for many years, until recent times where I'm just starting to question everything now. But anyway, just to finish off, in my limited experience, while the dark side makes all the clashing noise, the right side speaks in quiet whispers and paints pictures in our dreams. So I'm going to leave the correspondence there. I am going to finish up with one more video from Mark of the Forever Conscious Research channel, because there are some more points that he raises here which I think reinforce a lot of what I've discussed in this one. So it's another video of epic proportions. I had a feeling it would run and run in this way, and I've also got a feeling that this won't be the end to all this. There's going to be more backlash, there's going to be more response videos, no doubt, and plenty more correspondence, but I do welcome that. So if anyone wants to email me, it's markdevlin2022@protonmail.com, or just drop your comments in the section below whatever video platform you're watching this on. And again, just to reinforce the point, I'm not making these videos to demoralize my audience. I'm not making these videos to make anyone feel sad or despondent. Quite the opposite, actually. I'm trying to do the right thing as I perceive it. I'm trying to ask important questions. I'm trying to give people the opportunity who wish to explore these topics a platform with which to do that, to listen to what other people have to say and to exchange ideas and viewpoints and maybe come up with a few answers between us all. But it's never my intention to bring people down. I always prefer to put a positive slant on things when I can. I like to inject a bit of humour here and there to kind of lighten the mood. And I think anyone that's ever come to one of my live talks will see that all I'm trying to do is help people, uplift them, and bring truth and freedom into the world. What's on my t-shirt is what I stand for. These are my values. Truth, freedom, justice, love is what I'm all about. That's what I stand for. I'm no kind of Satanist. I'm no kind of dark occultist, despite what people might tell you. Just before I go, a couple of things I do want to mention. I've got a couple of upcoming speaking tours. The first is in Scotland, and this is taking place over the middle weekend in March. I'm going to be doing talk events titled Music's Military and Mind Control Connections, going back to my core work, which is all about exposing the true nature of the corporate music industry. So I'm doing an event in Glasgow on Friday 15th of March. This is at West Brewery on Glasgow Green. That's in the evening, around about 7 p.m. The following day, Saturday 16th of March, Dundee, Clark's on Lindsay Street. This is an afternoon event. Doors open 2:30, event starts at 3. Then on Sunday 17th of March, I'm going to be in Edinburgh at the Hibernian Supporters Club, close to Leith, I believe. That's an evening one, kicking off at about 7 p.m. So if you're in Scotland and you want to get along and access this information, it'd be great to see you at these gigs. I'll put the link below to the Try booking site where you can get tickets in advance to any of those 3 gigs. The next tour that I want to mention is in America, United States. It's a US East Coast mini speaking tour. I'm hoping to do 4 dates as part of this. As things currently stand, I've only got 3 fully confirmed. So what I can tell you is that on Wednesday the 3rd of April, I'm going to be in Boston, Union Tavern in Somerville, just outside Boston actually, one of the suburbs. That's an evening event kicking off around about 6:30. Then I'm going to be in Philadelphia on Saturday the 6th of April. At the moment we're just finalising which of 2 venues that's going to be at. That's going to be an evening one, kicking off at 6 p.m. It's going to be in central Philadelphia. And as soon as I get confirmation of which exact venue we'll be using, I'll be mentioning that on my channels. Then the following day, Sunday 7th of April, going to be in New York City, Manhattan. This is at the Town School venue. It's on 76th Street. That is an afternoon event running from 2 to 5 p.m. So that's Boston, 3rd of April, Philadelphia, 6th of April, New York, Manhattan, Sunday, 7th of April, and I'm hoping to add an event in Connecticut. So we're working on trying to pin down a venue somewhere in Connecticut, maybe New Haven, if not elsewhere in CT. Very excited to be in the United States at the time of the eclipse, which is due to happen as well. I am in New York City on the 8th of April, and I'm going to be outside of the totality zone. But I hear that up near Buffalo, Niagara Falls, that's right in the midst of where that eclipse is going to be in full effect. So thinking of taking a trip up to Buffalo to just experience that eclipse, because I've never actually experienced a total eclipse of the sun. That will be an amazing experience to be a part of. So if you're in the United States and you can get along to any of those gigs, again, the details are in the links below. The Try booking page is now open for Boston and New York, and it soon will be for Philadelphia. And then if we add a Connecticut gig, that will be in there as well. I'm going to have to run a crowdfunder. Unfortunately, I don't like doing these things, but I've got a lot of costs to meet in making this tour happen. So If anyone in the United States that can get along to these gigs or wishes to donate otherwise is able to assist, then of course any contribution is going to be gratefully appreciated. The crowdfunder link will be posted as soon as I create that. That will be any day now as well. Also to mention, I've now got a Patreon channel, so anyone that finds value in my core research work, again talking about the music industry, is able to join that Patreon channel, and you can support me that way if you wish. The donations definitely help me to continue doing my work. There are costs involved in doing work of this nature. So if you wish to show your gratitude and you have found value in what I've put out there, joining the Patreon is a great way of supporting me in my work going forward. Plenty of other events coming up in the UK and lots of festivals to look forward to in the summer. For everything else, you can go to djmarkdevlinuk.com and all the links are there. So, this was God 3.0. As to where things go from here, who can possibly say? Time will tell. Looking forward to that chat with Eric Dubé next week. Watch out for that one. Other than that, see you soon.
Some of the craziest New Age stuff that we hear is that we have to come down to earth because God needs to experience earth through us. Now seriously, isn't that the most whacked out crap you've ever heard? I mean, come on. So we have to come down here and deal with all this horse shit, this clown show, because God needs us to be his little playthings? And apparently, God created this place, and it's a complete dumpster fire filled with atrocities and suffering and all sorts of things. And of course, there's a lot of good too. Come on, you can't be negative all the time. But let's talk about the big picture, guys. We don't need to be coming down here for any God or... I mean, seriously, what is this God? It's a clown show. You know what it is? In my opinion, a strong opinion, is what we are dealing with is we are dealing with some sort of AI. It can't be anything else. It is so sophisticated and so... it runs like a machine. Think about it. Just let's apply some common sense. Common sense. Do you think if there is a God, some creator of everything and anything, do you think that God is just chilling at the light at the end of the tunnel 24/7? Like it doesn't have anything else better to do? Really, is that what's going on? Really, I mean, we've been hoodwinked for so long. We just need to stop with just blindly going along with the show constantly. It's ridiculous. I've heard other cases similar, like where they say, everything's connected and, it's all part of the universe and stuff like that. But what if that is what is perceived here, guys, right? If everything is connected, then it maybe, this is just an assumption, but you would think that it kind of all roots back to one source. And kind of that one source kind of stems out and spreads itself throughout the multiverse in all these different realms. But what if what Andy Ears and all these other experiences are going through are just perceiving, everything's connected, but it's connected within the overall confines of the matrix. We don't know if any of that is absolutely accurate outside of this system. See, so many questions that don't get asked, don't even much less considered. And we just need to think bigger. We really do. We can't think so limited, like in terms of, everything is one and we're connected and this, that. Maybe that's the case. Maybe. I'm not saying it isn't, but why assume? We can't assume that's the case. A good matrix, a good parasitic matrix like what we're in now, would want us to feel like that is the case. Maybe where people go when they experience the light and they think is God, and it's all knowing, and it's all, like he says, it's old, it's been here for a while, then maybe that's like us plugging into the AI, like a direct connection, and then boom, enhanced, and then we feel like everything is connected, but it's all part of the trick. I could see something like that being the case. But what is it outside of the whole matrix? That's the big question. How does it all play itself out in other realms, other universes? Just saying.